Hello Midnights. We hope you enjoy our stories. Next one, The Global Hum, Decoding the Widespread Sense of Impending Change. Don't forget to subscribe. Across continents and cultures, an almost palpable shift in the collective consciousness is emerging. It's a diffuse, unsettling sensation, a whisper of disquiet that something profoundly strange, perhaps even epochal, is on the horizon. This isn't merely individual anxiety, it's a worldwide phenomenon. A pervasive restlessness and imbalance that is becoming increasingly pronounced. While humanity has weathered countless periods of upheaval, from the fall of empires and global pandemics to industrial revolutions and ideological wars, the global hum of today carries a distinct resonance. Unlike past eras where shifts were often localized or driven by singular, identifiable forces, the current disquiet is characterized by its simultaneous, interconnected, and globally pervasive nature. It suggests that the very foundations of human organization, our relationship with the planet, and our understanding of truth are undergoing a simultaneous, rapid metamorphosis, a phenomenon arguably unprecedented in scale. To understand this global hum, we must delve into its multifaceted nature and explore the complex interplay of factors contributing to it, drawing upon psychological, sociological, and historical perspectives, and crucially, highlighting the growing chorus of public figures and institutions who acknowledge this collective state. At its core, this widespread feeling is an anticipatory anxiety on a societal scale. Individuals report a persistent sense of unease, a feeling that things are out of alignment, and a vague premonition of disruption. This manifests not just as a mental state but often as physical symptoms, a churning feeling, difficulty concentrating, irritability, and a general inability to relax. Unlike localized anxieties tied to specific personal events, this phenomenon is amorphous, a dread of an unspecified, yet significant, shift in the global order. The hum isn't solely a cognitive or emotional response to external stressors, it also seems to tap into a more primal, almost intuitive, knowing. Many individuals report a gut feeling, a sense of wrongness or a pervasive feeling of being on the precipice of something huge, even if they can't articulate the specific threats. This goes beyond rational fear and touches upon a collective intuition, perhaps even a shared unconscious awareness, akin to a collective premonition. This could be linked to Jungian concepts of the collective unconscious, where archetypal patterns and shared human experiences resonate across individuals, feeding into a generalized sense of foreboding that transcends individual experience. It's a feeling of being primed for transformation, sometimes accompanied by a sense of heightened awareness or even a subtle shift in perception, as if the very fabric of reality is subtly vibrating. Beyond classic anxiety symptoms, people report vivid dreams or nightmares with apocalyptic themes, a sense of accelerating time where days and weeks seem to rush by, synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that suggest an underlying order or pattern, yet also a sense of impending change, and a feeling of being disconnected from older ways of being, as if societal norms and personal routines no longer fit. There's a heightened sensitivity to global events, a raw empathy that makes distant suffering feel acutely personal, and a powerful identification with collective suffering. Some experienced a longing for a different way of living, a profound yearning for fundamental societal shifts towards greater sustainability, equity, or spiritual fulfillment, even if they can't define its exact form. It can feel like a low-frequency vibration, not always audibly heard but deeply felt in the nervous system, a constant undercurrent of agitation that makes true calm elusive, akin to living constantly with the subtle tremor of an earthquake about to hit. For some, it manifests as a persistent, low-grade buzzing or rumbling, similar to an idling distant truck or an appliance running constantly, even when no discernible source is present. This subtle, pervasive noise can disrupt sleep, trigger headaches, and create a sense of being perpetually on edge, making it difficult to fully relax or concentrate. While this audible hum is often attributed to localized industrial sources or even forms of tinnitus, its widespread and unexplained nature in many reported cases across diverse geographic locations suggests a broader, perhaps psychological or neurological, component inextricably tied to this collective unease. While anticipatory anxiety is a core component, the global hum also encompasses a wider spectrum of psychological states. For some, it manifests as a profound sense of powerlessness and existential despair, a feeling that individual agency is overwhelmed by the sheer scale and complexity of global challenges, leading to paralysis. This can lead to apathy or disengagement, as individuals retreat from what feels like an insurmountable reality, opting for escapism or nihilism. However, for others, the hum serves as a catalyst for radical empathy and a heightened sense of collective responsibility, inspiring a surge in altruism and solidarity. It fuels a drive towards community building, activism, and a search for meaning in the face of adversity, demonstrating the complex human capacity for both fragility and resilience in times of profound uncertainty. Quantitative data increasingly supports this. For instance, surveys by the American Psychiatric Association, APA, and organizations like the American Psychological Association, APA, regularly report rising levels of anxiety and stress among populations, with significant portions attributing it to current events and future uncertainties, rather than merely personal tribulations. The APA's Stress in America surveys consistently show high levels of stress related to climate change, political polarization, and the future of the nation, illustrating how macroscopic concerns are deeply impacting individual well-being. Globally, institutions like the World Economic Forum, in their annual Global Risks Report, consistently identify environmental and geopolitical risks as top long-term concerns, highlighting a pervasive sense of vulnerability. The 2024 report, for example, emphasizes a polycrisis world where multiple, interconnected risks amplify each other, directly contributing to a sense of systemic instability and generalized fear. The reasons for this collective unease are manifold and interconnected, spanning environmental, geopolitical, technological, socio-economic, and even a profound psychological overload. These are the underlying drivers that translate external conditions into the internal, pervasive sense of imbalance, shaping what people are truly fearing. The erosion of environmental stability and predictability is a primary driver. For millennia, human civilizations have relied on a relatively stable and predictable climate for agriculture, settlement, and resource availability, providing a bedrock for societal development. Climate change is fundamentally disrupting this foundational stability. The accelerating pace and increased intensity of extreme weather events, such as the record-breaking heat waves witnessed across Europe and North America in recent years, the devastating floods in Pakistan and Brazil that displaced millions, and prolonged droughts in the Horn of Africa leading to severe food insecurity, are not merely isolated incidents but represent a systemic breakdown of environmental equilibrium. The scientific consensus from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, reports, now detailing concrete observations rather than abstract projections, is stark and increasingly urgent. This constant barrage of climate-related disruptions cultivates a deep-seated feeling of precariousness. It's the subconscious realization that the fundamental conditions for human flourishing, once taken for granted, are now under direct and immediate threat. This leads to eco-anxiety, chronic fear of environmental doom, and solastalgia, a form of grief for a changing planet and the loss of familiar landscapes and ecosystems. Public figures like UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres frequently emphasize the code red for humanity status of climate change, further amplifying the urgency and validating public fears. Beyond the physical destruction, the erosion of environmental stability represents a deeper, philosophical loss. For much of human history, nature was seen as a constant, an immutable backdrop against which human dramas unfolded, a source of stability and predictability. Now, this very backdrop is in flux, actively threatening human existence, instilling a profound existential insecurity. It challenges anthropocentric views, forcing a reckoning with humanity's place within a delicate, interconnected planetary system and our responsibility for its degradation. The hum here is the lament for a lost sense of natural order and the dawning realization of our profound ecological interdependence, often leading to a collective sense of guilt and responsibility for past actions and a desperate search for solutions. People fear irreversible environmental catastrophe, that climate change has already passed irreversible tipping points, leading to runaway effects. They dread mass displacement due to uninhabitable regions and rising sea levels, leading to unprecedented refugee crises that could destabilize nations. There's a tangible fear of resource wars over dwindling water and arable land, and a widespread apprehension about the breakdown of global food systems, leading to widespread famine and instability on a scale previously unimaginable. The thought of a future where human civilization is permanently challenged by an uncontrollable, hostile environment is a profound source of dread and a constant, low-level fear. Another significant factor is the fracturing of global order and the rise of systemic instability. The post-Cold War era of unipolarity and relatively stable international institutions, built on a foundation of liberal democratic ideals and free trade, is eroding. We are witnessing a rapid transition to a multipolar world characterized by increased great power competition, a decline in trust in international norms and treaties, and a proliferation of regional conflicts. The unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, the prolonged conflict in Gaza with its devastating humanitarian impact, and escalating tensions in the South China Sea are not just isolated events but symptoms of a wider geopolitical recalibration, where long-standing diplomatic mechanisms are failing. The weaponization of trade, energy, and information, for example, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, widespread disinformation campaigns, further exacerbates this instability, eroding the trust necessary for international cooperation. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank repeatedly warn about the economic fallout of these geopolitical shocks, emphasizing disruptions to global supply chains, volatile commodity prices, and financial market instability, directly impacting everyday lives. This fragmentation creates a profound sense of insecurity and unpredictability on a global scale. People perceive a world where established rules are breaking down, where the threat of large-scale, cascading conflicts, including cyber warfare and information warfare, is ever-present and difficult to contain. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva's assertion that we're not in Kansas anymore perfectly captures the disorientation people feel when foundational assumptions about global peace and cooperation are fundamentally challenged. The fracturing of global order is not just about power shifts, it's a crisis of shared belief systems and foundational trust. The post-World War II liberal order, despite its flaws, provided a framework for international cooperation and a common understanding of progress and human rights. As this dissolves, the hum reflects a disorientation, a widespread uncertainty about fundamental values, justice, and the very possibility of collective solutions to global problems. It's a re-emergence of tribalism on a global scale, where the other is increasingly seen as a threat, rather than a partner in shared human endeavors, leading to increased xenophobia and isolationism. The most visceral fear is that of large-scale, conventional wars or even nuclear conflict between major powers, a fear that was thought to be relegated to history. Beyond that, people fear the erosion of democratic norms and institutions, leading to a global surge in authoritarianism and a loss of personal freedoms and civil liberties. There's anxiety about economic collapse driven by conflict, impacting livelihoods, investments, and global prosperity, and a pervasive dread of increased surveillance and control by states, justified by an ever-present security threat. The sense is that the world could rapidly descend into chaos, impacting daily safety and long-term stability for generations. Technological acceleration outpacing societal adaptation also profoundly contributes to the hum. The current pace of technological advancement, particularly in artificial intelligence, AI, biotechnology, and automation, is unprecedented in human history. While offering immense potential for human advancement, it's also creating a profound future shock where societal structures, ethical frameworks, and human psychology struggle to keep pace with rapid innovation. Concerns range from widespread job displacement due to automation and advanced AI across various sectors to the profound ethical dilemmas posed by autonomous decision-making algorithms, the rise of sophisticated deepfakes that blur the lines of reality, and algorithmic bias perpetuating societal inequalities. Genetic engineering raises questions about human identity and the very definition of life. The pervasive nature of social media further fuels misinformation, entrenches echo chambers, and contributes to cognitive overload, overwhelming individual processing capabilities. This rapid, often unbridled, technological progression evokes a deep sense of loss of control over the future. People feel that the very definition of work, human interaction, and even reality itself is being reshaped at a pace they cannot comprehend or influence, leading to feelings of helplessness. Prominent voices like Yuval Noah Harari frequently highlight how AI and bioengineering could fundamentally alter human existence, prompting existential questions. Elon Musk's repeated warnings about uncontrolled AI, even if sometimes sensationalized, serve to amplify this widespread apprehension, particularly around the concept of a superintelligence beyond human control. The World Economic Forum also highlights in its "Is technology creating an anxious generation?" reports the strong link between increased smartphone usage, constant digital connectivity, social media immersion, and rising rates of anxiety and depression among younger populations globally. People fear widespread job obsolescence and economic irrelevance as AI takes over tasks previously done by humans, leading to potential mass unemployment and a rethinking of societal value. There's a profound fear of AI surpassing human control or developing unforeseen, negative intentions, the Skynet scenario, as popularized in fiction, symbolizing an uncontrollable, hostile AI. People worry about the complete loss of privacy due to pervasive surveillance technologies, the erosion of personal autonomy, and the ability for powerful actors to manipulate opinions and perceptions through sophisticated algorithms and deepfakes, undermining democratic processes. There's also the fear of losing authentic human connection and meaning in an increasingly virtual world, and the ethical nightmare scenarios presented by unregulated bioengineering, raising questions about human dignity and equality. Furthermore, Deepening socio-economic divides and erosion of social cohesion fuel the hum. Despite overall global wealth continuing to grow, the widening gap between the wealthy and the poor continues to accelerate, both within and between nations, creating unprecedented levels of inequality. This creates significant social resentment, a pervasive feeling of injustice, and a perception that the system is rigged against the average person, benefiting only a select few. Compounded with this is the fragmentation of shared narratives, often driven by digital tribalism, and the rise of identity politics, which frequently leads to increased polarization, a breakdown of civil discourse, and a profound distrust in established institutions, government, traditional media, scientific bodies. This erosion of social cohesion undermines collective action and shared purpose. The rise of populist movements capitalizes on these grievances, promising radical solutions and often scapegoating internal or external others. The Pew Research Center's global surveys consistently show that a majority of adults across nations view economic inequality as a very big problem, reflecting a deep public concern. The United Nations World Social Report warns of an intensifying social crisis driven by insecurity, inequality, and a deep distrust in governments and traditional power structures. This internal fracturing generates a profound sense of instability within the very fabric of society. When citizens feel unheard, exploited, or that their future is bleak due to systemic inequities, it erodes trust, fosters cynicism, and can lead to widespread despair. Pope Francis's outspoken critiques of the economy that kills and his persistent advocacy for a more inclusive society resonate with millions globally, articulating a moral unease with current economic models. The pervasive global hum is not merely an internal state, it has tangible socio-political consequences. This widespread disquiet provides fertile ground for populist movements and demagogues who offer simplistic answers to complex problems, often by scapegoating minorities or external entities, exploiting existing fears and resentments. It explains the unprecedented volatility of political landscapes globally, where long-standing political parties lose ground, and radical ideologies gain traction. The public's deep distrust in established institutions, amplified by misinformation, makes populations more susceptible to narratives that promise a return to a perceived golden age or a radical break from the status quo, even if these promises are unrealistic or harmful. This collective unease significantly influences voting patterns, fuels social movements, and challenges the overall stability of governance, often manifesting as protest votes or widespread civic unrest that governments struggle to contain. People fear permanent economic decline for themselves and future generations, including an inability to afford basic necessities like housing and healthcare, leading to a diminished quality of life and a loss of the middle-class dream. There's a dread of societal collapse due to civil unrest, widespread protests, or political extremism as frustrations boil over, potentially leading to widespread violence and instability. They fear the erosion of social mobility and the perpetuation of cycles of poverty, leading to a two-tiered society with little hope for those at the bottom, creating a permanently fractured social structure. Finally, information overload and the blurring of reality contribute significantly to this pervasive unease. The digital age has brought an unprecedented volume of information, much of it contradictory, sensationalized, or outright false, making it increasingly difficult for individuals to navigate. The rise of misinformation and disinformation, amplified by algorithmic biases on social media platforms, creates echo chambers and makes it increasingly difficult for individuals to discern truth from fiction, eroding objective reality. This constant bombardment of often negative or alarming news, without the traditional filters of professional journalism or sufficient time for personal processing, can lead to cognitive overload, mental fatigue, and a profound sense of overwhelm. This constant flow of often alarming and conflicting information contributes to a profound sense of epistemological uncertainty, a feeling that one can no longer trust what is real or true, that all narratives are suspect. This erodes the very foundation of shared understanding necessary for collective action and informed decision-making in a democratic society. When people don't know what to believe, they become more susceptible to extreme narratives, conspiracy theories, and less capable of forming coherent worldviews, leading to anxiety about the future and a sense that nothing makes sense anymore. Experts on information warfare and media literacy frequently speak about the societal impact of this infodemic, comparing it to a disease that weakens the body politic. The digital sphere is not just a conveyor belt of information, it acts as a powerful amplifier and distorter of the global hum. Algorithmic feeds, designed to maximize engagement, often prioritize emotionally charged content, creating filter bubbles and echo chambers that reinforce existing anxieties and biases, preventing exposure to diverse perspectives. This constant exposure to curated negativity, combined with the erosion of traditional journalistic gatekeepers, means that individuals are perpetually bombarded with alarmist narratives without sufficient context or opportunity for critical evaluation. The hum is thus not just sensed, but actively produced and amplified by the very technologies meant to connect us, leading to a form of digital solipsism where collective reality becomes increasingly fragmented and anxiety-inducing. People fear being unable to distinguish truth from lies, making them vulnerable to manipulation by powerful actors or foreign adversaries who can exploit this vulnerability. There's a growing fear of mental health crises driven by constant negativity and the inability to escape the relentless deluge of alarming news. They worry about the loss of a shared reality necessary for a functioning democracy and society, leading to deeper polarization and intractable conflict. The fear is that the very basis of human communication and collective sense-making is breaking down, rendering collective problem-solving almost impossible. The global hum isn't a theoretical construct, its pervasive influence is evident in numerous real-world phenomena, offering concrete signs that this collective unease is already shaping our present. We see heightened societal polarization and distrust across many nations, often fueled by an inability to agree on fundamental facts or a shared vision for the future. This is observable in the rise of partisan media, the spread of conspiracy theories, and the increasing difficulty in finding common ground on critical issues, leading to legislative stalemates and public acrimony. The hum manifests here as a palpable tension in public discourse, where dialogue often devolves into shouting matches and mutual suspicion. Accompanying this is a widespread surge in mental health crises. Beyond academic surveys, global mental health statistics show a disturbing trend, with anxiety disorders, depression, and stress-related conditions on the rise, particularly among younger generations. This is evident in increased demand for mental health services, higher rates of burnout in workplaces, and even a rise in stress-induced physical ailments. The inability to articulate the source of their unease often leads individuals to internalize the hum, resulting in chronic stress and emotional fatigue. Furthermore, there's been an increase in social unrest and protests globally, from Yellow Vest movements in France to climate strikes and anti-government demonstrations in various countries across Latin America, the Middle East, and Asia. Populations are expressing their frustration and fear through direct action. These protests often stem from a confluence of the factors described above: economic injustice, perceived governmental inaction on climate change, or a sense of democratic erosion. The hum translates into a collective roar when anxieties boil over indivisible public discontent, sometimes leading to violent clashes or widespread disruption. We also observe volatile economic markets and consumer behavior as the unpredictability stemming from geopolitical tensions, climate events, and technological disruption contributes to erratic financial markets. Investors and consumers alike exhibit increased caution or impulsive behavior, driven by fear of future instability. This is evident in trends like quiet quitting, a reflection of widespread disillusionment with traditional work structures, or sudden shifts in consumer confidence tied to global headlines, indicating a deeply embedded economic anxiety. The hum here is the constant thrum of economic uncertainty, influencing daily financial decisions and long-term planning for individuals and corporations alike. Another telling sign is the obsessive consumption of news and doom scrolling. The paradox of information overload is that it often leads to a desperate search for clarity, even if that means constantly consuming negative news. The phenomenon of doom scrolling, compulsively checking news feeds for distressing updates, is a clear sign of the hum's grip. Individuals are drawn into a perpetual cycle of anxiety as they seek to grasp the seemingly chaotic world around them, often without finding resolution or a sense of agency, exacerbating their distress. This constant digital immersion exacerbates the feeling of being overwhelmed and helpless, leading to a desensitization to crisis. Finally, there's a growing interest in alternative lifestyles and resilience movements. As a counter-response to the overwhelming sense of instability, there's a noticeable increase in interest in self-sufficiency, localism, off-grid living, permaculture, and community-building initiatives. People are actively seeking to create pockets of resilience and autonomy against perceived systemic collapse, indicating a proactive acknowledgement of the hum's underlying message and a desire to build alternative futures. This trend suggests a widespread desire to reclaim agency and find meaning outside of conventional societal structures that are perceived as failing. Regarding the historical precedent of this global hum, it's crucial to distinguish between localized or specific periods of collective anxiety and the pervasive, interconnected, and globally simultaneous nature of the current phenomenon. Throughout human history, societies have undoubtedly experienced widespread unease in response to significant crises. The Black Death in the 14th century, for example, induced widespread fear, despair, and a profound shift in religious, social, and economic structures across Eurasia, leading to a sense of impending apocalypse for many who believed it was divine punishment. Similarly, the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, in Europe, with its unprecedented devastation, widespread famine, and religious strife, created a pervasive sense of chaos and instability that deeply scarred generations, leading to widespread societal anxieties and a questioning of existing political and religious orders. The Industrial Revolution also brought immense social upheaval, mass migration to burgeoning, often squalid, urban centers, and the fracturing of traditional community bonds, leading to new forms of urban enemy, alienation, and collective stress that manifested in social unrest and philosophical critiques. Even the Cold War era, mid-20th century, characterized by the constant existential threat of nuclear annihilation, fostered a pervasive underlying anxiety that permeated daily life, popular culture, and political decision-making, though often paradoxically contained by an ideological divide that provided a clear other and a framework for understanding global threats. However, what makes the current global hum potentially unprecedented is its simultaneity, interconnectedness, and the speed at which information, and therefore anxiety, travels globally. Past periods of collective unease, while profound, were often more localized or spread at the comparatively slow pace of communication technology of the time. The anxieties of 14th-century Europe, for instance, did not instantly reverberate in distant Asian societies in the same way that a financial crisis, a global pandemic like COVID-19, or a major geopolitical conflict now triggers immediate and widespread concern across the entire planet within hours. The rise of instantaneous global communication through the internet and social media, coupled with the systemic interdependencies in our modern world, economic, environmental, technological, and social, means that a crisis originating in one region can almost immediately generate a ripple effect of concern, fear, and even direct impact across the entire globalized system. The information overload and blurring of reality, as described, is a uniquely modern accelerator of this collective unease. While previous eras had their forms of propaganda, limited information, and rumor mills, today's digital landscape allows for an unparalleled bombardment of conflicting narratives, sensationalism, and curated realities, making it harder for individuals to process objective truth and fostering a constant state of low-grade alarm and cognitive dissonance. Furthermore, the scale of the threats today, an existential climate crisis threatening the very habitability of large parts of the planet, the unprecedented potential for autonomous AI to reshape human society in ways we cannot fully comprehend, the proliferation of WMDs, and the apparent breakdown of effective global governance mechanisms, presents challenges that are arguably species-level in their scope, rather than merely societal, regional, or even continental. While previous generations faced catastrophic threats, the current constellation of interconnected, systemic crises, amplified by real-time global awareness and the erosion of shared meaning, creates a unique psychological burden. Thus, while collective anxiety is a recurring theme in human history, the global hum of today appears to be a distinct manifestation, amplified by the unique conditions of the 21st century. It's a collective intuition of profound, interconnected transformations that are not just about to happen, but are already underway, making this period a potentially singular moment in the human experience of shared unease and a widespread sense of impending change.